The morning sun streamed through the window of the upscale condominium in Chicago's Gold Coast neighborhood. The air smelled of freshly brewed coffee and buttered toast, but the silence in the apartment was deafening. On the marble kitchen floor lay a woman's lifeless body, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, a pool of blood staining the white tiles. The victim was 65-year-old Marilyn Foster, a retired real estate agent known for her sharp wit and impeccable taste. Just hours earlier, she had been celebrating the happiest moment of her life, her secret wedding to a much younger man, Travis Green, 32, a personal trainer with movie star looks and a dark past. But now happiness had turned into horror. The first sign of trouble had been a single post on Facebook, a simple wedding photo, captioned, "Forever yours, my love," a declaration of joy, a celebration of love, and the last thing she would ever do. The emergency dispatcher's voice crackled through the speaker. 911, what's your emergency? A panicked male voice replied, breathless and shaky. It's my wife. My wife. She's not breathing. There's blood. Oh God, please send someone. Sir, I need you to stay calm. What's your location? The Pinnacle Towers, Unit 1902, East Bellevue Place. Oh, please, hurry. The line went dead. Chicago PD's Detective Ethan Callahan, a seasoned homicide investigator with 20 years under his belt, arrived at the crime scene along with paramedics and uniformed officers. He was in his early 50s, his salt and pepper hair a testament to years of chasing killers. Callahan's gut told him that this wasn't a random home invasion. Something about this scene felt personal. Marilyn Foster's body was positioned awkwardly. She was wearing a silk robe, her hands still clutching a smartphone smeared with blood. The screen was cracked, frozen on a social media post. The wedding picture. Travis Green was crouched in the corner of the kitchen, his face buried in his hands, his chest rising and falling in quick, uneven breaths. His expensive Rolex glinted under the kitchen lights. When Callahan approached, Travis looked up, his blue eyes red with tears. I don't know what happened, he stammered. I woke up late. She was already up. I found her like this. Someone must have broken in. Callahan glanced around. No signs of forced entry. The apartment was spotless, with nothing out of place except for the blood pooling around Marilyn's head. And you didn't hear anything? Callahan asked, his sharp gaze locking onto Travis. No, I was sleeping in the other room, Travis said quickly. She wakes up earlier than me. When I got up, I saw her and I panicked. Callahan nodded slowly. The young husband had all the right emotions. Too perfect, too controlled. Forensics got to work, dusting for prints and collecting evidence. The paramedics confirmed what Callahan already suspected. Marilyn Foster was dead, blunt force trauma to the head. The murder weapon? Unknown, but likely something heavy and smooth. Callahan's partner, Detective Jessica Monroe, knelt beside the body. She was younger, in her late 30s, analytical and methodical. No sign of struggle, Monroe observed. No broken nails, no defensive wounds. Either she trusted the killer, or she never saw it coming. Callahan exhaled sharply. Or both. Monroe picked up Marilyn's phone carefully, avoiding the blood. The screen was still on Facebook. Look at this, she murmured. Callahan read the caption aloud. Forever yours, my love. He exchanged a glance with Monroe. She made their marriage public, Monroe said. Wasn't it supposed to be a secret? Callahan turned to Travis. Why was your marriage a secret, Mr. Green? Travis hesitated. We, just wanted to keep it private. Marilyn's family, her friends, they wouldn't understand. Callahan folded his arms. Wouldn't understand what? The age difference. The money. You know how people talk. Callahan did know. A woman like Marilyn, wealthy and established, marrying a younger man with a less than stable career? It was bound to raise eyebrows. Still, something wasn't adding up. Monroe, scrolling through Marilyn's phone, suddenly stiffened. Callahan, take a look at this. She turned the phone toward him. A notification popped up on the screen. One unread message from Travis Green sent at 3:14 a.m. Delete that post. Now! Callahan's jaw tightened. He turned to Travis. Care to explain why you told your wife to delete the wedding picture just hours before she was killed? The color drained from Travis's face. I, I didn't mean anything by it. I just... Callahan didn't need to hear the rest. His instincts had been screaming since he walked into the apartment. Travis Green wasn't just the grieving husband. He was their prime suspect. Travis Green sat in the apartment's living room, his hands trembling as he clutched a glass of water an officer had given him. His eyes darted between Detective Callahan and Detective Monroe as they took their seats across from him. The Chicago skyline stretched beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, but the beauty of the city was lost on Travis. He was pale, sweat forming at his temples. "All right, Mr. Green," Callahan began, voice calm but firm. "Let's go over your morning again, step by step." Travis cleared his throat. "I woke up around, 8:30, I think. Marilyn wasn't in bed, which wasn't unusual. She always got up early. I went to the bathroom, brushed my teeth, and walked into the kitchen, and I saw her like that." He swallowed hard. "I panicked. I called 911. That's it." Monroe tilted her head. "You didn't hear anything? No screams, no struggle?" "No," Travis insisted. "I'm a deep sleeper." Callahan leaned forward. "So deep that you didn't hear someone enter your luxury high-rise apartment and murder your wife?" Travis rubbed his face. I don't know what you want me to say. I didn't hear anything." Monroe glanced at her notes. "Mr. Green, do you know why your wife posted your wedding picture last night?" Travis stiffened. "Yeah, she was happy. She wanted to share it with the world. But you didn't," Callahan cut in. "You texted her to take it down." "Why?" Travis looked away, his jaw tightening. "It's not what you think. I just didn't want the attention. Marilyn's family, her son especially, he never liked me. I knew that post would cause problems." "So, you argued?" Callahan pressed. Travis hesitated. "Not really, I just asked her to delete it." She didn't respond. Callahan nodded. "You ever get violent with Marilyn?" "No, never," Travis snapped, his voice rising. "I loved her." Monroe remained expressionless. "Then you won't mind us checking your phone records, right?" Travis's mouth opened, then shut. Callahan caught it. That half-second of hesitation. "We'll need you to come down to the station," he said, "just to clarify a few things." Travis exhaled sharply. "Fine, but I didn't kill my wife." At the station, Travis sat in the interrogation room, arms crossed. He wasn't in handcuffs, yet. Across the table, Callahan and Monroe studied him carefully. "Anyone besides Marilyn see you last night?" Monroe asked. Travis nodded. "I was at a bar, the Blackwood Lounge. I had a few drinks." "Alone?" My friend Justin Parker was with me. He's a trainer at the gym where I work." Callahan scribbled the name down. "What time did you leave?" "I don't know." "Around midnight?" "And Marilyn? Did you see her when you got home?" "Yeah, she was already in bed." "Did you two talk?" "Not much. She was half asleep." Monroe folded her arms. "And you're sure you didn't wake up until 8:30? Travis's eyes flickered. Yes, a lie. Callahan could see it, but without proof, it was just a hunch. "All right," Callahan said, standing. "We'll verify with Justin." Travis forced a nod. "Go ahead, he'll tell you." Justin Parker was waiting in a separate interrogation room, tapping his foot anxiously. When Callahan and Monroe entered, he gave them a forced smile. "So, Travis says you were with him last night," Callahan said. "The Blackwood Lounge. What time did you two get there?" Around 10:30, Justin replied. "Had a couple of drinks, caught up. What time did you leave?" "I left first, maybe around 11:30. Travis stayed longer. Callahan and Monroe exchanged a glance. Travis had said he left around midnight. "When was the last time you saw him?" Monroe asked. Justin hesitated. "I mean, we texted after. Around 1. He said he was heading home." Callahan leaned in. "And did you actually see him leave?" Justin shifted uncomfortably. "No, but, I mean, he said he was going home." Callahan sighed. "So let me get this straight. You left at 11:30. You don't know if Travis stayed or left. He texted you at 1, but you never saw him after that?" Justin nodded slowly. "That's not an alibi," Monroe said flatly. Justin swallowed. "Wait, you think he did it?" Callahan didn't answer. Instead, he stood and turned to Monroe. Let's check the security cameras at the Blackwood Lounge. Let's see what time Travis really left. Justin exhaled nervously as the detectives left the room. Travis's perfect alibi was already crumbling. The Blackwood Lounge had a dozen security cameras, and it didn't take long for Callahan and Monroe to get what they needed. On the screen, Travis could be seen drinking with Justin at the bar. The timestamp read 10:37 p.m. At 11:31 p.m., Justin got up, patted Travis on the back, and left. Travis stayed behind, scrolling on his phone, sipping his drink. At 11:52 p.m., Travis paid his tab and stood. At 11:55 p.m., he walked toward the exit. At 12:10 a.m., the camera outside the bar caught him stepping into a black car, a rideshare. Callahan checked the timestamp again. Travis had left earlier than he claimed, and if his phone records placed him near the apartment around 12:30 a.m., that meant one thing. He had plenty of time to go home, see Marilyn awake, and kill her. Back at the station, Callahan and Monroe sat across from Travis once more. His confident demeanor was gone. "We checked the security footage," Callahan said. "You left the bar at 11:55, not midnight. You took a rideshare at 12:10 a.m. Where did it drop you off?" Travis swallowed. "My place, not Marilyn's?" Monroe asked. "Number I—" He stopped. Callahan slid a folder across the table. Inside was a printout of Travis's phone records. "Your GPS says otherwise. You were at Marilyn's by 12:30 a.m. Silence. Monroe leaned in. "You texted Marilyn at 3:14 a.m., demanding she delete the wedding post. But you never said she responded." Travis's eyes flickered. "Was she even alive when you sent that text?" Callahan asked. For the first time, Travis looked truly afraid. His alibi had fallen apart, and they weren't done yet. Travis Green sat in the interrogation room, his face pale, his fingers nervously drumming against the table. Across from him, Detective Callahan and Detective Monroe stared him down, the silence in the room stretching thick between them. The security footage had shattered his alibi. His phone records placed him at Marilyn's apartment hours before he claimed to have woken up to find her dead. Now there was nowhere left to run. "So let's go over this again," Callahan said, his voice calm but unwavering. "You told us you got home at midnight. That was a lie." Travis swallowed hard but said nothing. "You said you woke up at 8:30 and found Marilyn's body," Monroe added. "We know that's not true either. Your phone pinged at Marilyn's address at 12:30 a.m., and you sent her a text at 3:14 a.m., hours before you called 911 at 8:41 a.m. You were awake. You knew she was dead." Travis clenched his jaw. "I told you I didn't kill my wife," Callahan sighed, leaning back in his chair. "You know what I think, Travis? I think Marilyn didn't take down the wedding post, and that made you angry. Angry enough to wake her up, angry enough to argue, and maybe angry enough to do something you regret." Travis shook his head violently. "No, I would never—" Monroe slid a folder across the table and flipped it open. Inside was a printed copy of Marilyn's Facebook post, the one with their wedding picture. And below it, the comments section. Hundreds of comments, some congratulatory, others filled with shock and disapproval. But one in particular stood out. "This is a joke, right? Call me, now." It was from Daniel Hensley, Marilyn's 38-year-old son. Travis's expression shifted, just for a second, a flicker of fear. Callahan noticed. "Ah, so now we're getting somewhere." Detective Monroe drove out to meet Daniel Hensley at his office, a sleek financial firm in downtown Chicago. He was already waiting for her, arms crossed, jaw tight. "You said you wanted to ask about my mother," he said coldly. "Did you arrest him yet?" Monroe raised an eyebrow. "You seem certain that Travis is guilty." Daniel scoffed. "My mother was a wealthy woman, and Travis? He's a 32-year-old gym trainer with nothing to his name. He married her for money, and when she posted that picture, when the world found out what he had done, he killed her." Monroe studied him carefully. "You seem angry." "Of course I'm angry," Daniel snapped. "My mother married some gold-digging loser behind my back. I was her only family, and she didn't even tell me." "When was the last time you spoke to her?" Daniel hesitated. "Last night, Around 9 p.m. I saw the post and I called her. We argued. I told her Travis was using her. She got defensive. He exhaled sharply. Then she hung up on me. Did you try calling her again? Of course I did. Over and over. She never answered. So I texted. Monroe pulled out a printout of his text. This is a joke, right? Call me. Now. Daniel nodded. She never responded. And where were you last night? At home. Alone. Anyone who can confirm that? Daniel clenched his jaw. Number Monroe took a deep breath. Daniel was angry, furious even. But was it enough for murder? All right, she said. We'll be in touch. Back at the station, Callahan and Monroe met with the forensics team. Dr. Evelyn Carter, the medical examiner, had her report ready. Time of death? Callahan asked. Between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., Dr. Carter replied. Callahan and Monroe exchanged a look. Travis had sent the text at 3:14 a.m. If Marilyn was already dead, that meant he had staged it, texting her phone to make it seem like she was still alive. Cause of death? Monroe asked. Dr. Carter flipped. A page in her report. Manual strangulation, no defensive wounds, which suggests Marilyn was either unconscious or too weak to fight back. Toxicology? We found traces of zolpidem in her system. It's a prescription sleep aid. A high enough dose could leave someone disoriented, maybe even knock them out completely. Monroe frowned. Was it prescribed to her? There's no record of Marilyn taking any sleep medication. Callahan leaned in. Then how did it get in her system? Dr. Carter shrugged. That's what you need to find out. Callahan and Monroe re-entered the interrogation room, their expressions unreadable. Travis sat up. Can I go now? Callahan smirked. Not quite. Monroe set the forensic report on the table. Marilyn was strangled to death between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. She also had a heavy dose of zolpidem in her system. Know anything about that? Travis swallowed. She never took sleeping pills. Callahan leaned forward. Then how did it end up in her bloodstream? Silence. Maybe someone put it in her drink, Monroe suggested. Travis's knee bounced under the table. You think I did that? Did you? Callahan asked. No. Then tell us what really happened last night. Travis rubbed his face, his fingers trembling. I came home, okay? Around 12:30. Marilyn was awake, checking her phone. She saw the comments. She was upset. Did you argue? A little. I told her she should have deleted the post. She told me to stop trying to control her. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a drink. She was still on her phone. I went to bed. And at 3:14 a.m.? Monroe asked. Travis looked up sharply. We know you were awake, Callahan said. We know you sent that text. Travis clenched his fists. I texted her. She didn't reply. I fell asleep. And when you woke up at 8:30, she was already dead? Yes. Callahan sighed. Travis, we both know you're lying. Travis's breathing was uneven. We have your phone records. Your timeline doesn't add up. We know Marilyn had zolpidem in her system, but she didn't take sleep medication. Monroe leaned in. So here's what we think happened. You put something in her drink to knock her out. Maybe you just wanted her to sleep. But when you saw that wedding post, when you saw the comments, you snapped. You strangled her. And then you waited hours before calling 911, pretending to wake up and discover her body. That's not true, Travis whispered. Then tell us the truth. Travis's hands gripped his head. His entire body was shaking. And then, I didn't mean to, he choked out. Monroe and Callahan exchanged a glance. They had him. Travis sat in the interrogation room, his hands shaking as he rubbed his face. The weight of Detective Callahan's words settled over him like a thick fog. I didn't mean to, he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Monroe crossed her arms. Didn't mean to what, Travis? Travis exhaled sharply. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Callahan leaned forward. Then tell us what happened. Start from the beginning. Travis stared at the table for a long moment before finally speaking. We got married in secret because she wanted to avoid the drama with her son, Daniel. She knew he wouldn't approve. I told her that was fine. I wasn't marrying her for her money. I loved her. But, Monroe pressed. Travis clenched his fists. She promised we'd keep it private, but then she posted that picture. I saw it just before I got home that night. In the comments, they were brutal. Everyone called me a gold digger, said I was using her. Even Daniel was furious. So you got angry, Callahan said. I was hurt, Travis insisted. I walked into the apartment, and she was still awake, looking at her phone. I told her she should have deleted the post. She refused. She said she was proud of us, but she didn't understand what it would do to me. So you argued? Travis nodded. Yeah, I kept telling her she didn't think about how this would make me look. She said if I really loved her, I wouldn't care what people thought. Monroe tilted her head. And then? Travis's voice cracked. She laughed at me, said I was being paranoid. That was it for me. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a drink, and took a few of my sleep meds, Zolpidem. I needed to calm down. But then I had an idea. Callahan narrowed his eyes. You drugged her. Travis swallowed hard. I just wanted her to sleep. I thought if she slept, I'd have time to think. I crushed a couple of pills and mixed them into her tea. I told her I wanted to make peace, so I brought it to her. She drank it. Then she started getting drowsy, so she went to bed. And then what? Travis's breath hitched. I sat there staring at the post. The longer I looked at it, the angrier I got. People were tearing me apart. My gym, clients were messaging me, asking if it was true. I felt humiliated. So you went into the bedroom, Monroe said. Travis let out a shuddering breath. I just wanted to talk to her. I woke her up, but she was groggy. I told her to take the post down. She mumbled something about dealing with it in the morning. That pissed me off. I grabbed her phone, tried to unlock it, but she snatched it back. And, Travis closed his eyes, she told me to stop acting like a child. That was it, I snapped. I put my hands around her neck and I don't even know how long I held on. His voice cracked. By the time I let go, she wasn't moving. A long silence filled the room. Callahan let out a slow breath. So you killed her over a Facebook post. Travis's face crumpled. It wasn't just that. It was everything. The way people saw me, the way she ignored how I felt. I didn't plan this. It just happened. Monroe stood up. You drugged her, strangled her, and then staged a text to make it look like she was alive hours later. That's not an accident, Travis. That's murder. Travis buried his face in his hands. He didn't argue. This was it. They had their confession. Detective Monroe sat at her desk, typing up the final report. The case was as clear as day now. Victim, Marilyn Hensley Green, 65 suspect. Travis Green, 32 cause of death. Manual strangulation, preceded by sedation with Zolpidem motive. Rage over a social media post revealing their secret marriage. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage placed Travis at Marilyn's apartment at 12:30 a.m., contradicting his original alibi. Phone records showed that Travis sent a staged text at 3:14 a.m., long after Marilyn was dead. Forensic analysis confirmed that Zolpidem was in Marilyn's system, and Travis admitted to drugging her. His confession sealed the case. By noon, Monroe and Callahan received a confirmation. The district attorney was moving forward with first-degree murder charges. As they watched Travis being escorted to his holding cell, Callahan shook his head. All of this, he muttered, over a damn Facebook post. Monroe sighed. Social media doesn't kill people. But the truth always comes out. The courtroom was tense, filled with the soft murmurs of reporters, legal teams, and members of the public who had followed the case from the moment Marilyn Hensley Green's body was discovered. The trial of Travis Green had officially begun. At the defense table, Travis sat with his attorney, Howard Ellison, a seasoned criminal defense lawyer known for his aggressive courtroom strategies. Travis wore a dark suit, but no amount of professional attire could hide the tension in his face. His usual confident posture was gone, replaced by a nervous slouch. Across from him, prosecutor Linda Marston shuffled through her notes. She was a sharp, no-nonsense attorney with a reputation for winning high-profile murder cases. The judge, Honorable Marion Wexler, entered the courtroom, and everyone stood. As she took her seat, she adjusted her glasses and spoke. We are here today for the trial of the state of New York versus Travis Green, charged with first-degree murder in the death of Marilyn Hensley Green. Jury selection will now begin. The selection process lasted all morning. Marston and Ellison questioned potential jurors, looking for biases and ensuring an impartial panel. By afternoon, 12 jurors were sworn in. 7 men, 5 women. The fate of Travis Green was in their hands. Prosecutor Linda Marston stepped up first. She walked toward the jury, her voice calm but firm. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about a man consumed by greed, pride, and rage. Travis Green, a man 33 years younger than his wife, murdered her because she made their marriage public. He was afraid of being judged, of being seen as a gold digger. Instead of simply asking her to remove the post, he chose to drug her, strangle her, and then cover his tracks. She paused, letting her words settle. The evidence will show you exactly how he did it. The security footage, the autopsy, the staged text messages. Everything will point to one undeniable truth. Travis Green murdered Marilyn Hensley Green in cold blood. She stepped back. Ellison stood next, buttoning his jacket as he approached the jury box. His tone was measured, almost sympathetic. Travis Green did not murder his wife, he began. What happened that night was a tragic accident. The prosecution wants you to believe this was premeditated, but the evidence will show something different. A man who acted in a moment of passion, not planning. A man who deeply regrets what happened. He sighed, looking over at Travis. We ask you to consider not just the facts, but the circumstances. Travis did not intend to kill Marilyn. He was pushed into a situation where emotions took over. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is not first-degree murder. The jury listened, their faces unreadable. The trial had begun. The first witness was Detective Callahan. Detective, please describe the crime scene, Marston said. Callahan adjusted his tie. We found Marilyn Hensley Green lying on her bed. There were no signs of forced entry, and the apartment showed no struggle. But what stood out was the presence of crushed zolpidem in her system. Sleeping pills we later confirmed were in Mr. Green's possession. And what did the autopsy reveal? Manual strangulation. There were bruises consistent with fingers pressing against the victim's throat, meaning she was killed by direct force. Marston turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this was no accident. Strangulation is intimate. It takes minutes to complete. This was not a moment of panic. It was murder. Ellison crossed his arms. Detective, did my client admit to drugging his wife? Yes, but just answer the question. Yes or no? Yes. And in his confession, did he say he planned to kill her? No, but no further questions. Ellison's strategy was clear. Create doubt. If Travis hadn't planned the murder, could it really be first degree? Ellison called Travis Green to the stand. Travis looked at the jury, his hands shaking. Travis, did you love your wife? Yes, Travis said, his voice cracking. I know how it looks, but I did love her. Then tell us what happened that night. Travis exhaled. I was angry, I won't lie, but I never meant to kill her. I put the pills in her drink because I thought if she slept, I'd have time to cool off. But when I woke her up later, we fought. She called me a child. I don't even remember making the decision. I snapped. He swallowed. I let go as soon as I realized what I'd done. I tried to wake her up, but she was gone. Ellison nodded. You panicked, yes. I sent that text from her phone because I was scared. I didn't know what else to do. Ellison turned to the jury. Travis Green made a mistake, a terrible one, but he didn't plan this. It was not premeditated murder. Marston stood for cross-examination. Mr. Green, you say you snapped, but the bruises on Marilyn's neck suggest prolonged force. You held on long enough to kill her? That's not an accident, is it? Travis hesitated. And why did you send a fake text if you didn't think you had done something wrong? Travis shifted in his seat. I panicked. You panicked enough to stage evidence? Silence. Marston turned to the jury. This wasn't a mistake. This was a cover-up. The trial was coming to an end. Marston spoke first. Ladies and gentlemen, look at the facts. Travis Green had the means, the motive, and the opportunity. He drugged his wife, strangled her, and then tried to cover it up. This was not an accident. It was murder. We ask you to deliver justice. Ellison followed. Travis Green is guilty of a terrible act, but he is not guilty of first-degree murder. There was no premeditation, no planning. He acted in a moment of emotional distress. At most, this is manslaughter. Please consider that carefully. The jury was dismissed. Now all they could do was wait. The jury had been sequestered since Friday afternoon. 12 men and women sat in a stark, windowless deliberation room, the weight of justice pressing on their shoulders. A large wooden table separated them, with piles of notes, crime scene photos, and transcripts from the trial spread across its surface. The jury foreman, Henry Calloway, a retired school principal, cleared his throat. All right, let's get started. We need to go over everything carefully before we take a vote. Some jurors nodded, others sat back, arms crossed. Susan Barrett, a middle-aged nurse, tapped a pen against the table. I think it's clear. He killed her in cold blood. He drugged her, strangled her, and then tried to cover it up. Mark Reynolds, a mechanic, shook his head. Yeah, but was it really planned? Or did he just lose it in the moment? That makes a big difference. Lori Chen, a law student, chimed in. Premeditation doesn't have to mean he planned it for days. It just has to mean he intended to kill her in that moment. Strangling someone isn't like pulling a trigger. It takes time. He had plenty of chances to stop. Henry sighed. Let's go over the evidence again. They started with the autopsy report. Cause of death, manual strangulation. Bruising pattern, showed consistent pressure, meaning the victim was conscious and struggling for at least 2 to 3 minutes before death. Toxicology report, Marilyn had high levels of zolpidem, a strong sedative, in her system. Alex Monroe, a former police officer, exhaled. If she was drugged, she was probably half conscious. That makes it worse. He knew she couldn't fight back properly. Then they reviewed the crime scene photos. No signs of forced entry. The victim was found neatly positioned in bed. Travis sent texts from her phone after she was already dead. Henry turned to the group. So let's break it down. We have a man who drugged his wife. Then at some point, he strangled her. When he realized she was dead, he sent fake texts to cover his tracks. That doesn't sound like someone who just snapped. Michael Harris, an IT consultant, rubbed his chin. But if it was planned, why didn't he make it look like an accident? Why not claim she overdosed instead of making it obvious she was strangled? We need to be unanimous. Let's talk more. After hours of debate, the last holdouts finally shifted. The intent was clear. He had enough time to stop. He had covered his tracks, and the drugs proved he planned some part of it. The final vote, unanimous for first-degree murder. Henry pressed the buzzer. We have a verdict. The courtroom was packed. Travis sat at the defense table, his hands gripping the edge. His face was pale. Linda Marston, the prosecutor, sat with her team, her expression unreadable. The judge looked at the jury foreman. Mr. Calloway, has the jury reached a verdict? Henry stood, a folded piece of paper in his hands. We have, Your Honor. He handed the paper to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. She opened it, scanning the words before nodding. Travis Green, please rise. Travis stood, his lawyer beside him. The judge read aloud. On the charge of first-degree murder, how does the jury find the defendant? Henry took a deep breath. Guilty. The courtroom erupted. Travis's face drained of color. His lawyer whispered something to him, but he barely reacted. Linda Marston allowed herself a small, satisfied nod. Justice had been served. The judge banged her gavel. Sentencing will be scheduled in 3 weeks. This court is adjourned. As Travis was led away in handcuffs, his fate was sealed. Marilyn Hensley Green had found justice at last. As the courtroom emptied, murmurs of conversation filled the air. The verdict was clear. Travis Green was guilty of first-degree murder. He would spend the rest of his life behind bars. For Detective Evelyn Carter, there was no sense of victory, only the dull weight of another case closed. Justice didn't bring Marilyn back. Justice didn't erase the horror of that night, the betrayal, the fear, the violence. Evelyn gathered her notes and made her way to the hallway, where Linda Marston, the prosecutor, was speaking to reporters. This verdict reaffirms that no one is above the law, Linda said firmly. Marilyn Hensley Green was manipulated, used, and ultimately murdered by the very man she trusted most. Today, her voice was heard. Evelyn barely listened. She had seen this before. Court victories, headlines, interviews. But after the cameras stopped flashing, there was always another victim, another crime, another investigation. She sighed and made her way to the station. Travis sat in a cold gray cell, his hands clasped together. He had barely spoken since the verdict. His lawyer had tried to talk about appeals, but Travis knew the truth. There was no coming back from this. He would never see the outside world again. He would never have the life he had imagined. The wealth, the status, the easy escape after spending Marilyn's fortune. Instead, he would rot in this cage, surrounded by men who had killed, stolen, and ruined lives just like him. He wasn't special anymore, just another convicted murderer. In her quiet office, attorney Rebecca Lawson finalized the legal transfer of Marilyn's estate. Her will had been clear. Everything was left to her younger sister, Diana Hensley. Rebecca leaned back in her chair, staring at the document. She knew, Rebecca whispered to herself. Marilyn had updated her will just a month before her death, removing Travis as a beneficiary. It was almost as if she had sensed something was wrong, but she had still gone through with the marriage, still posted the photos, still trusted a man who saw her as nothing more than a payout. Detective Carter sat at her kitchen table, a cup of coffee in her hands. The case was over, but the questions remained. Why had Marilyn rushed into the marriage? Did she suspect Travis was dangerous? Would she still be alive if she hadn't posted those photos? Evelyn had solved the case, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this should never have happened. She glanced at her phone, a news article flashing on the screen. Wealthy heiress murdered by young husband. A cautionary tale of love and deception. Evelyn sighed. Marilyn deserved better than being a headline. Justice was served, but the tragedy remained. And somewhere out there, another predator was waiting for their next victim. 3 months later, Travis Green was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Marilyn's estate was donated to a domestic violence charity in her honor. And Detective Evelyn Carter? She moved on to the next case, knowing that evil never rested. But neither did justice.